All right. Welcome to the first, I'm just going to say first recorded flipping the script. And this is just the idea I had, a while back about just some of the intercultural studies and readings that I've encountered in class, or even just like personal readings, and how, stereotypes are negative narratives that surrounds us, and it's been passed on from generation to generation unless we have an interaction, unless the interaction breaks that negative narrative. So hopefully this simple video will help us change some of the negative narratives we have. Yes, so for today we have Tikhala from, I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you some time to introduce yourselves. Go ahead, Tikhala.
Well, hi, Ria. Hi, everyone watching this. I am Tikhala Itaye from Malawi.
Yeah.
And whoop, whoop, whoop. And just a bit about myself. I am the executive director of a youth-led organization called Her Liberty. You can see a bit of it in the background.
Yes.
That looks into equipping young people to be change agents in their own community, and just really kind of supporting, mentoring them. And that's pretty much the work that I do back at home.
Yeah, and they can follow you. I mean, you have social media, you're on Facebook, right? And I just want to share that every time I had a conversation with Tikhala, I'm always fired up. I feel like she's always doing a lot, and also serving the community and your country, your country. And it's just so inspiring. So I have a couple of questions for us that we want to discuss, because we're talking about the negative narratives that's been so prevalent in our society. And like I said, unless we have an interaction with other cultures, that negative narrative will remain. So, but FYI, Tikhala is actually a good friend of mine. We met at a university when I was teaching dance, and she was in a dance class too. Yes. And that friendship just grew even though you finish your program. And can you remind me of your program again in the university?
Yeah, I came to do my master's in global health, but master's in public health, but specifically global health.
Awesome. And you're currently back in Malawi.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yes,
so you stayed in the United States for how long?
So that was from 2019 to 2021 June. So I left like 2 months ago.
Oh yeah, and then you're back. So are there any other countries that you visited apart from the US?
Wow, I think with like a lot of the work that I've been doing, so besides like work I've been doing with my organization that I founded, I had been involved a lot with kind of youth issues globally and regionally, working a lot with the United Nations. So with that work and opportunity I had an opportunity to kind of travel a lot of countries. Actually, I think probably I've gone up to about 22 countries all over the world.
What?
Just to name a few, like Norway, Sweden, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ethiopia. Like it's a whole list, but I think it's the opportunity I had with the work I was doing that I was able to travel to all these countries. But I have lived in, like, because of my dad's job, I've actually lived in Zimbabwe and South Africa. And then I did my undergrad in law in Namibia. So I've actually like lived in like 3 other different countries.
Wow. Okay. So having that wealth of experience and just exposure to many cultures, you probably encountered some of the misconceptions people have when they say, I'm from Malawi. So would you like to share some of those misconceptions so that we can actually avoid them?
Yeah, no, as soon as you said misconceptions, I was like, Oh, yes. Like so many of them. And I think just to like start off on sharing on this, I think the first thing is a lot of it, I received it when I was, I'll talk about two countries. The first one is the US. So in America, I remember the first time I kind of started my scholarship, my master's, and you're meeting different people, and a lot of like Americans that I was meeting would always ask me, oh, where are you from? And I'll be like, oh, from Malawi. And they're like, Malawi? And they'll be like so confused, and I'll be like, yeah, that's in Africa. They're like, oh, you're from Africa. And I'm like, no, not Africa, like a country in Africa. And they'll be like, yeah, so you're from Africa. So,
Oh my
and I'll be
word.
like, no, the country in Africa. And they're like, country in Africa? Like, it's just like this kind of, like, you meet people who think your country is not a country. It's just like, just because you said it's Africa, then Africa is a country, and you're just somehow Malawi may fit into this country called Africa. I think there are a lot of people that I met that don't realize that Africa is a continent with different countries inside of it. A lot of people will be familiar with South Africa, but Malawi was just something completely new. And then like other people I would meet would be like, oh, Malawi, oh, oh yeah, that's a really poor country. And they'll be like, oh, you speak really good English. Like so surprised that, I'm educated and I speak good English, and already it's a poor country, and automatically people feel sorry for me. And I mean, I do understand that our countries are really, one of the low income countries. But besides its issues on issues about poverty, it's like the people are there are very diverse. It's like any other countries where, it's partly developed, partly not. There's beautiful places in Malawi to go see. But every time someone thinks about Malawi, they'll be like, oh, poor country, oh, not educated. And I had a lot of people who were surprised that I spoke good English, because you just thought that, yeah, those have been some of my experiences. There was also a time when I went to India, and I had, I don't have braids on my hair right now, but I had braids, which is just like extensions, and they braided. And I just had people just be like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, Malawi, and they'll be touching my hair, or like touching it. They're like, oh, wow. Just like really awkward encounters where you're like, is this really necessary? So yeah, those have been
So
like,
wait, what do you do when that happens though?
you
You
feel,
just like
you really
freeze?
feel uncomfortable, because I remember that moment, and I was with my friend from Botswana, and she had dreadlocks on, and we're both so uncomfortable, because it's like, someone just coming and touching your hair and being curious about where you're from. And I'm like, you wouldn't like this if we had to, do this to you. It's just a bit invading.
It's like, I think, it's like, oh, you're pregnant, and then they just start touching your tummy. And moms would be like, whoa. Hello. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are helpful, those are helpful to know. So so those are some of the misconceptions. First of all, okay, I want to review that Malawi is not equivalent to Africa. Africa is a continent with several countries in there, and Malawi is one of the countries. So to say that, oh, you're from Malawi, you're from Africa, is not recognizing the fact that Malawi is a country on its own.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think the other misconception is everyone thinks would just be known as being a poor country, Yes, there's poverty issues, but in reality of that, there's amazing people doing amazing things. It's a beautiful place, beautiful location. And I think just wanting to be known for the good of Malawi as well, than just like the aspect of just like, oh, poor and educated people, because they are people that are actually educated in the country.
I think it's also helpful not to associate, if there are some problems, poverty problems, it's helpful not to equate it to being not educated group of people. Because when you said that, oh, oh, Malawi must be poor. And then the comment with, how come you speak good English? It's almost like associating um how economically, let's say, how do you say that? The problems in uh poor the poor is there such a word as poorness? The poverty problems in a country,
Yeah.
right? It's not helpful to associate it that the people are not necessarily
Yeah.
educated. I think
Yeah.
that's a that's a common misconception.
Misconception. It
Yes.
is. And you know what? Actually, I forgot one, which is really common when people hear someone from Africa. They'll be like, "Oh, oh my gosh, you guys like run with lions, and do you stay in huts and like you have wild animals all around you?" And you're just like, "No." Like there's this thing of like when people think of Africa, it's like safari or like you live with lions and you have pet lions and you stay in a
Mm,
hut and you hunt every
mm,
day. So there are
mm,
other people also with that perception, but yeah, I think that was one of the funniest ones.
mm.
I actually had a friend who actually went along and like lied to someone and was like, "Yeah, I'm even a prince in this like Zulu land, and we hunt every morning." But
For
like yeah, there are
breakfast.
others who have that kind of image as well.
Mm. Well, we'll hope, hopefully technology and like everybody having access to phone would somehow, neutralize that idea that, Malawi and other poor countries are still, are a certain concept or idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, earlier you mentioned that there is also good in Malawi. So, what is, maybe you can share two or three things that you're proud of, being, um, proud of your country. So, what
Yeah.
is good in Malawi that you want to share
Yeah.
with us?
So the first thing is that I love our community. We really are so together. I
Mm-hmm.
know, for example, just in comparison, um, there's a bit of a culture in the US about individualism. Whereas in Malawi, you can actually correct me on that one, but that's what I had noticed and what people had said. But like in Malawi, there's no such thing as, if I get married and I have kids, and there's no such thing as like getting a babysitter because I can always call my aunt or my sister
Mm.
to come by and help me with the baby. So there's just element
For
of just
free.
community. Yeah, for free. There's an element of just community and support. When there is a wedding, there's just like so much celebration, even from people in your village and
Mm-hmm.
people within the two different families coming together. And I think one thing that I value about Malawi is that essence of community and community support. Like even if there's like a funeral that happens at my house, you would expect like family members to come, but you have friends, you have neighbors that will come to the funeral to come help you out. You have people maybe who just stay in your neighborhood. You may have not met them. They've heard about a funeral at that house, but they'll still come and just kind
Mm.
of be there
Wow.
for you. So that
Mm-hmm.
kind of element of community and support is something that I really love, which is
Mm-hmm.
really embedded in us.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we're really friendly people. I'm not just saying that because I'm Malawian, but uh, if you ever visit Malawi, no matter where you go, like someone would just be happy to greet you. And
Mm.
we're very excited about meeting new people and getting to get people to know our culture, to get to know us. So wherever you go, and every village you visit to, you're celebrated, and you're celebrated in song and dance and clapping and celebration. And I think it's just so amazing. I think even being a Malawian, I visit different villages that I'm not from, and I
Mm-hmm.
still get that warm welcome of people dancing, people clapping, people celebrating you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, which is such a great joy. So I really love that kind of um, friendliness and hospitality in different communities,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how different you're, or how if you're even foreign from a different place.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I would say about Malawi is it has beautiful places.
Mm,
I think there's so much about Malawi's beauty that hasn't been talked about or shared.
mm,
I actually shared
mm.
something recently on Facebook, and people were like so shocked. And
I
then because
saw that. I saw
yeah,
that. I
mm-hmm.
was like, I
There's
want to
this
go
place
there.
this place that I shared called it's not Lake Malawi, but there's a place that we went to called Mambo Island.
Mm,
And people can just Google it if you want to see, but just like beautiful places where not many of us, talk about, or other people would like to kind of embrace about the beauty that's there. Amazing, beautiful mountains with beautiful
mm,
waterfalls, like amazing hiking sceneries. Like it's
mm,
got so much nature. And yeah, and I think that's also one of the things that I really think really makes us who we are.
mhm. Nice. Yeah, I saw that photo that you posted. It's really beautiful. I'm like, well, I want to tell my husband, let's go stay there for a bit. It's really gorgeous. Okay, so
Mm.
you've said that, okay, culturally, the the people in Malawi, or we call Malawians,
Malawians, yeah.
friendly to togetherness, community oriented, people needing help. It's easy to find help because you're surrounded with family members and friends and neighbors. And you also mentioned that, there's a lot of beautiful places to see in Malawi. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So at one point also, you were an international student. I want to talk about quickly about your experience as an international student in the United States. So how was that like? I know your program is in global health, so you probably have other, classmates that are from different countries. But what was the experience like for you, even just the style of teaching?
Yeah. Before I get to the teaching side, I must say the friendship side was amazing, and that
Mm,
like the group of friends I had, we were all from different countries, and I thought that
mm,
was really remarkable. So it was me, Malawian, and then there's a girl from she was American, and then there's a girl from Afghanistan, and then there's a girl from Guatemala, and then there's a girl from
mm,
Rwanda. And it was always five of us, studying together, and we became so close. And I always thought it was so amazing how all five of us, different cultures, different countries, being able to just connect like that and be just there for each other like that. And I
mhm.
I thought that was a big highlight for me, having to see kind of different, parts of the world being so
Yeah.
close.
Well, what do you think was
Um,
the connection, especially you're all coming from, different parts of the world? What was the main connection, you think?
Honestly, I think it was like the academics. we
Nice.
faced, we had, we how we all made friends was we started in one class together, and we were in this class. It was epidemiology. Took me a while to even know how to say that word, but okay. Um, and then we were in this class, and we had our first class, and then like we get out and we're like, man, this is so complicated. And we're both like, I've never been exposed to this. I'm not good with these kind of numbers, and and I don't want to do. And we happened to be in one circle and sitting close to each other, all thinking to ourselves, oh my goodness, how are we gonna get through this? And we were sharing how we felt
Mm,
about the class. And because of that kind of
mm.
common understanding and common challenge, we were like, let's start a study group together, and then
Oh,
through that study group together and doing homework together, it eventually got us to know each other even more, and just being close, really.
yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that in your group. I mean, I caught that one because you said that in your group, in your small circle of friends, you have people from around the globe, but also someone from the United States. I think that's
Yeah.
really enriching because at least oftentimes we hear international students kind of group together, but then not experiencing someone from, like a local. And
Yeah.
I think it's beneficial for both to experience, the rich diversity, right?
Yeah. Totally, totally. And then on the learning side of it, it was a bit challenging. The thing is, American English is very different to the English we have. So Malawi's history is that, we were colonized by the British, so we have British English, which is completely different to the American English. So having to even get used to write the way Americans write and speak, they spoke, because I felt like there were some things I said that, like, people were like, what did you say? And this is just an example, which is really funny. I remember there was a time I was with a group of my friends, and they were asking me, what time are you going to leave, the library? And I was like, oh, 4:30. And then they were like, 4:30? And I was like, yeah, 4:30. And then they're like, half past, like, they were so confused. And they're like, do you mean 4:30? Just like that small little moment where I'm like, I'm saying the most obvious thing. And then they're not used to hearing that when someone's telling the time,
Yeah.
So I think that challenge of kind of being aware that, like, some of the things I was saying, not everyone would understand them, and kind of get used to the way people explain certain things that were not the same to ours. So yeah, that was a learning experience. And then
especially if it's in academics, like the writing, there's so much writing.
Exactly, right? I really had to always kind of double check some of the things I wrote. So it would take me more time to write academic papers. And I remember going through, like, writing my thesis, and my thesis supervisor would always be like, program is with one M in the US, not two M's. And I constantly had her like, you keep making the same mistakes. You need to choose one, British English or American English, but you're in America, so you have to use American English. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna work on it.
Yeah.
So that was always a challenge with my writing. And then I think the other issue was on just the culture is very different. The academic culture is very different. The pressure of just, like, the amount of work you have to do and having to keep up with that pace was really hard. I found myself constantly working and studying all the time to just keep up and to adjust to the amount of pressure and the demand of, like, having to always deliver on assignments and readings. It was really, really intense. So kind of like mental health wise, you always found yourself just feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel so overworked, because you're not used to kind of like a high pace academic space. And then lastly, I would say, there was some classes where I kind of always felt like, misunderstood about certain things, or felt kind of like I was looked upon like, oh, she's from Africa, she needs more support, or her learning level is different from everyone else, where I honestly felt like it was the same level as everyone else, but there was just that perception. I remember there was a time where, when we went on Zoom, and we were doing online quizzes or online exams, online tests. And I remember, and this is more an issue of, like, equity, right? And I remember reaching out to one of the lecturers to say, I feel like this is a bit unfair, because we're a diverse group of students who have different typing abilities. People don't take pressure very well with time, because, it was timed. And I always felt like it's unfair because we all have different skill sets on how fast we type, how fast we process questions. And I don't think, there should be such a short time for things like, online tests or exams, because you won't be marked correctly to the best of your ability, right? You might know all the answers, but you're marked down because you didn't do things on time. And, her response was, she pretty much was like, oh, Tikhala, if you have a special needs, problem, you should have just, you signed up and kind of inform people, and would have, you would get more time. And I kind of was feeling like, I don't know, it really affected me, because I was like, this is not about that. Like, I'm speaking on behalf of all of us here, where we're all diverse and having to recognize the different needs that are there. And I think some lecturers don't realize that. And I think sometimes it's not quick to judge, to be like, oh, special needs and, sign up for this. But it's actually just saying, yeah, people are different. People have got different reading abilities, and it's not just automatically put them on the bracket of like, oh, you need special support or special need,
I think the special need term was off.
Yeah, exactly, as well. Because I was like, is it because I'm from Malawi? or, you know,
Yeah.
I'm black, you know, there was just
Yeah.
all these things going through my head. And
Mm.
then lastly was just a lot of global health examples when they're trying to teach about, you know, just development issues.
Mm.
When you're learning about, for example, just the political space, poverty, health challenges, obviously a lot of the examples they'll bring up is low income countries. And what
Mm.
used to always hurt me is the fact that they would show pictures, right? Like pictures of just like, you know, maybe like a woman in a rural community in Africa and showing how poor she is and her challenges. And that used to bother me a lot because I'm like, I don't think it's right to be showing pictures like that, because we don't, like, as a person coming from a community with issues like that, I don't go to America and take a picture of someone suffering in, you know, in the middle of the road, if they're in the streets and they're homeless. I don't take a picture of them and come back to Malawi.
Right.
Oh, here are the
In fact,
problems
we
in
rarely see
America.
that kind of photo. Because I remember
Exactly,
when I
right?
moved to the US, I was so shocked that there are homeless people in the United States, because how I perceive it, you know, without, visiting US first, was like, like there's really rich areas, right? Suburban
Yeah.
areas. Yeah, so you're right. But then how come in other countries, like almost that is represented when you say Malawi or let's say Philippines?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was also really hard to see because I was like, man, like you start to question that, you know, did this woman or did this child or consent to this picture? Did they even know that there'll be their pictures being
Mm.
used on all these other spaces? Is it right
Mm.
to do this? And
Mm.
yeah, that always kind of bothered me of having to be shown pictures of poverty from countries I can relate to.
Right.
And some examples would even be from my country. And I always felt really affected by that in terms of we can just talk about the challenges. We don't really need to show
Mm.
images of it. You know, I know you want to show the intensity of it, but I mean, be able to at least say that, hey, you know, I'm using this picture, this person did consent, they are aware that we
Right.
also, they're okay with us using this picture for academic purposes. But
Mm.
sometimes you see people that they'll just take a picture from Google and just be like, here is issues in Malawi and health
Wow.
problems, you know?
Wow. Yeah. That's actually a health, kind of like a healthy, no, that is a healthy suggestion when in class and we're trying to present a picture and reporting about other countries.
Yeah, because
Uh,
these are people's lives.
mhm.
I can't imagine being shown like that in different international spaces where I am going through a problem, I'm going through a challenge, I'm things are happening to me and someone's taking a picture of my need and my poverty and
Mm.
showing it across the globe like, oh,
Mhm.
look at this poor lady and this country. I mean, that's painful. These are painful experiences that people face and people are kind of showing it just for academic purposes. It's a bit
Yeah.
painful, especially if you're taking a picture of someone and not changing their lives, you know,
Right. Yeah.
and just using it for your own kind of purposes and not saying, hey, I took the picture of this woman and the and I also we supported this community, we did a lot for them and stuff like that, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, I know, I'm trying to limit this interview to under 30. And as you were sharing, I can't help but, ask the next question. I know you have a lot of projects involved. You're doing a lot of projects for your community. That's why it pains you to see, something like that, just reporting without even, asking. It's almost as if like that person doesn't even own herself. Like she doesn't even have the right to say,
Yeah.
no, don't put my picture there. It was just like rip off from the internet resource and then have it used for, whatever purpose. But I can see the passion and the heart, the compassion that you have for your country and for your community. Do you want to share some of the projects? I know you have a lot. If you want to highlight a few projects, and if there's a link, maybe I can also connect the link to your projects if people are interested to help out or to give. Yeah, do you want to highlight?
Yeah, sure. So my organization was really founded at a place of looking at different, just meeting different young people at a community level that were just going through a lot of issues. And other, just for example, not being able to go to school, meeting young
Mm,
people living with HIV and not understanding what's going on with them in terms of not even understanding what HIV is and how do they
mhm.
access treatment for it, meeting young girls as young as 12 and 13 who were pregnant and never even
Wow.
knew about issues of, sexual intercourse. They just found out that one day a man kind of, violated them and they're pregnant,
Mm,
but don't even know what's going on with their body. And they're just, me meeting all these kind of different young people in different communities really broke my heart. And
mm,
that's how kind of my organization in Malawi was founded. It originally was founded in Namibia when I was studying my undergrad because of a lot of issues we were seeing that especially girls were facing when it came to like just gender-based violence.
mhm,
But when I came back to Malawi, I kind of started like a new chapter of Her Liberty, where it looked at really focusing on just both, working with young people. Even though the name, everyone thinks it's like looking at girls alone, but we put the he in her. So we're working with
mm,
both the boys and the girls working together and just some of these social issues they face.
mhm,
Um, and what we do is, so just to mention some of our projects, in my village called Zomba, we
mhm,
have a school that was founded by my grandma, and I came on board to kind of really expand that project. And it really came from a place of just what I was just mentioning, the first challenge of just a lot of young people not being able to access just education opportunity, being able to just learn and being in
mhm.
school. And
Yeah.
this village didn't have a school in that area, and that's kind of what moved my grandma and I kind of came on board with our organization to kind of support. And we have about almost 1,150 students there.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've been lucky in terms of, we've had support from the Ministry of Education, but the challenges have been hard because knowing that you're in a village, access to water
Mm,
has been a really big challenge for us. And Ria, you've been part of just hearing some of those challenges where you're like, you have all these students and, every day they have to go get a bucket of water, to have at the school, around the school. And these are real
mm.
life issues. And we did a bit of
And this is not
fundraising.
by choice, by the way.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Because
this is not
a
by
lot of
choice.
rural communities, and I must say this is not just my village, but a lot of rural communities in the country in Malawi don't have access to clean water, and many of them are drinking from wells or rivers that just the water is dirty and it's causing diarrheal diseases and all these other
Mm,
problems.
mm,
So, the school project and doing stuff with young people at the school, so education and some of the initiatives we do there has been one of the projects that we do and support.
mhm,
And the other project that we do has been, we call it like the peer model. So we really believe in training and equipping young people to also kind of support their peers.
mm.
So, in the Bible, they call it discipleship, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of like the peer model, the same kind of model you're thinking about, where you train a group of young people on giving them like key information about like health,
Mhm,
education, telling them
mhm,
just, teaching about the different opportunities they are, giving them
mhm.
any guidance about career and everything like that.
Right.
And then challenging them to say, you've been given the information, you've had access to these opportunities. Now we want you to go to really hard to reach locations in rural areas and to go help other young people to have
Mhm.
access to this information and these opportunities who necessarily would not. So especially young people in the rural areas, they don't have access to internet the way we do to learn
Yeah.
uh, all the things that we're able and privileged to learn. So
Right.
those are
If
the
there's like no
initiatives we do.
classes because of
Mhm.
COVID, there's like no classes, right? They don't have an option to go on Zoom or go
Exactly. So because
internet.
even with COVID, there's a huge group of young people in rural areas who don't have access to computers. They don't even know what a computer is. And
Mhm,
I mean, it's hard and it's interesting. I had a conversation with someone today in government saying, what can we do to get more computers out there and get them, young people to learn how to use a computer? And they were just talking about like, Malawi is not yet there economically to be able to financially support stuff like that. But we've been lucky. I've had friends from different parts of the world that have helped us with some of equipment like that, like sending laptops to help young people with just ICT and teaching them computers. And those are small little kind of initiatives we've been doing, and really supporting girls who, teenage pregnancy issues, who's fallen pregnant at a young age, 13 to 14 years old, and trying to help them to get back to school, because most of them will drop out and get forced to get married early. And what we try to do
because
is
of what happened.
And trying to get them motivated to be like, this is not, you don't have to go this way, you can still go back to school and so forth. And yeah, so those are some of the programs we do.
Wow.
It hasn't been easy, but it's very fulfilling work. Just trying to see just the change and just the impact that's happening among different young people, and just knowing that there's so many young people with so much potential, and poverty and limited information should never be a barrier for you fulfilling your potential.
Right. Yeah. I think it was also, just listening to you, what was helpful for us to understand is that when somebody presents a problem, and then and then I offer a solution, it's not as simple as supplying, like you said, technology or laptops. It's not as easy as point A to point B, because there are other underlying factors in order to facilitate or delivering point B, as simple as, like you said, having access to technology, because we're not there. So we don't know all these other factors to deliver that or to make that happen. I think it's helpful even in our conversations, in like problem solving, even in school, right? And you're in a global health program. Like when we talk about solutions for global health, it's really not as easy as, wash your hands. Like, okay.
Even especially in the time of COVID, I was like, man, like the solutions of preventing COVID are so Western, right? We're living in a country where majority of the population do not have access to water to keep washing their hands every single day. Many don't even have access to water or sanitizers, like, and I kind of
social distance.
Exactly, right? Because we're really communities with just, living in one house, and they're like 10 people in one small one-roomed house, and you're telling them to do things that they can't do, and it really makes you think, where you're like, we're not doing this right. Are we recognizing the inequalities that are there? Are we recognizing how we can support such communities in this time of the pandemic? And to be honest, I haven't seen as much, investment or support going to those communities. It's kind of like, yeah, we're aware this is happening. Yeah, there are inequalities. Yeah, there are these communities, but what are we going to do about it? So I think it was a reality check for a lot of countries on this, but I'm still not kind of seeing a lot being done to improve their lives, especially during the time of the pandemic.
Right. And even, let's say, the accessibility or the machinery to make the vaccine, like how, how is that even possible for other countries? I think it caught me when you said that the solutions that we presented are very Western. Let's say washing hands, the top two, wash hands and social distance, which is not always applicable to majority, to majority who can't even afford to social distance. Wow. Yeah, that is definitely an eye-opener. Oh man, this pandemic brought so many intercultural conflicts that are deeply, embedded in our way of thinking. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tikhala. I learned so much. I learned a lot. And if people want to help out, let's say, is there a way to, if they're interested about your organization, I'm sure there's a link somewhere that we can provide them And yeah, I'm super inspired by what you're doing in your community and in your country.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you. Thank you for doing this with me.
thanks, Ria. And I'm definitely gonna share a link where when COVID is over and people can travel, we're always happy to get volunteers coming down to work with our organization and to work with our school.
Yes.
And we'll provide like accommodation and get you like sorted.
Oh gosh.
So always
I'm
happy to
sign me up.
get
For real. For real.
yeah, no, it's been such a great joy to have this conversation, such an important conversation, and I hope this will move hearts and hopefully change narratives in terms of the way we see issues in the global south, especially in low developing countries.
Yeah. Awesome. But thanks, Tikhala. I'm gonna pause the recording now.